I'm kind of new around here. This semester I'm working on a project that I'm calling LaForge. It's a playlist tracker for independent radio stations, specifically for WRPI for this go-around, but the idea is that more radio stations will be able to benefit as well. Like it says, I'm a rookie to RCOS. I'm actually a senior. This is my last semester here at RPI, and I'm a double E, so I'm a little bit like a fish out of water. But getting into software development, especially open source, is something I've always been really interested in. Really intrigued by all the projects my friends have worked on. So the opportunity to come here and work with all of you as a support system and inspiration has really been huge. I'd like to thank you all for that. So here's a little bit about why LaForge needs to exist. Playlist tracking is a vital function that every independent and actually commercial radio station has to carry out. It's required for their license, and licenses are carried through one of these three organizations: ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. Those organizations act kind of as the big go-between between the labels that own the bands and the various releases that have been put out on those labels, and the people that are going to go ahead and purchase those rights. So they do all the royalty payouts and all of that, and they also are responsible for those awful top 40 charts that cause you to suffer greatly when you turn the radio on. And our obligation to them is we have to do every semester a 2 to 4 week tracking period, and it is a big pain in the ASCAP. So the way WRPI does this right now is a little bit inefficient. Their DJs are doing all their playlist tracking by hand. Every DJ comes in, runs a 1 to 3 hour show usually, and every song that they write, that they play, they're going to have to write down on a quarter sheet of paper. They write down the time they played it, track name, artist name, album name, sometimes a little bit of extra information if there's a tracking number on the CD or something like that. But those core pieces of information are what are required for the tracking. So it's done one song at a time. That's painstaking. You can't really get around it. And slips get lost, or sometimes DJs won't track their show altogether. I know there's been cases in which tracking has been so lacking that ASCAP has come back and said, no license for you until you do this over again and do it right. And the web stream had to go down for a couple of weeks and so on and so forth. So it's pretty inefficient, and there's a lot of benefit to be had here. So anybody who's kind of looking at where I'm going with this and has ever used the Picard MusicBrainz Picard tagger before, probably sees how this all ties in. MusicBrainz Picard is a pretty cool piece of software. It's open source, written in Python, and it's a metadata retrieval and tagger. What it does, you put a whole bunch of files in there, and it will batch search them and come back with all the data on those files. So say you downloaded a whole CD off some sketchy music blog site, and they all have www.freemp3.com 001 Rihanna whatever. Well, it'll fix all that. And what's going on under the hood is it's pulling two web services. The first one is the Music DNS web service. What it's going to do there is it uses the libofa open fingerprint architecture library to generate a short acoustic fingerprint from a portion of the song that you hand it. It sends that fingerprint over to Music DNS, and Music DNS will run a comparison with much more general fingerprints that are run. They're much more specific and detailed, and it'll come back with the best match or the best couple of matches and give you portable unique identifiers or PUIDs for each one of those fingerprints. Picard will take those fingerprints, fire them off to MusicBrainz, which is the open source music database, and that returns all the metadata. So right there are really two of the big core functionalities that LaForge needs in order to do its job. And the two things that we're going to add outside of that is we're not going to do what Picard does, which is add those into metadata built into the song file. We don't need to do that. We just dump them to a CSV log. And the little bit more intricate part of it is we have to listen to the radio. The name obviously is homage to the guys who did MusicBrainz Picard. I figured LaForge wasn't quite, Commander Riker, and Data's a really crappy name for a program, so LaForge it was. So here's where we are today. Right now I've got everything built up that queries both of those web services and logs all the data. And from those I started running some tests on libofa and what my requirements were to use it correctly. The documentation for libofa is a little bit contradictory. It hasn't been updated in a very long time because it was originally built through, everything's run through Music DNS. Music DNS folded in '06, and they turned into Music IP. And that existed for about 6 months, and then they went down, and then they came back up as Amplified. And the servers are still running. You can still query the music service, but you can't get new keys. All the links that are in the Linux documentation, all the documentation you might find online, Google Code, they're all dead links. They don't go anywhere. So I'm very lucky that the servers are still running somewhere and willing to accept the keys that are already out. But it was a little bit interesting. The documentation, more specifically, the issue here is that it says that I need to pass it the first 135 seconds of a song in order to get a good fingerprint. If the song's less than 135 seconds, it asks that I give it the whole thing. A little bit further down in the documentation, it says it should only fail if I pass it less than 10 seconds. So I said, well, that's good. We'll try and sneak by with 30 seconds. We'll see what we get. Maybe it'll work. And so once I had everything built up, I started trying to do that. And I discovered that I couldn't get good PUIDs on 30 seconds. I couldn't get anything at all. In fact, in most cases, I needed to hand it pretty darn near the whole song in order to get a decent PUID. If I cut off maybe 30 seconds at the end, sometimes I get a PUID, but it's usually not the right one. So, with that restriction, my old strategy is kind of blown. Originally, this is kind of what I was going to do. I'd have very high time resolution, just take 15-second chunks, and then if I ever ran into overlap or portions that weren't characteristic of the song, we could just dump those. We'd get another one later. If we got duplicates, we'd just dump the duplicates, no problem. Obviously, once I get into bigger chunks, I can't just do stupid listening, 135 seconds, 150 seconds, just chunk, chunk, chunk. Right here we have Radiohead's Mark II. Blink-182 is down off their self-titled. Stick them next to each other, start at the beginning of Mark II. Boom, you lost Mark II. It's gone. You'll never get down either because you won't have a single piece that's long enough to get a good PUID out of it, so stupid listening isn't going to work. So I'm considering some other strategies. Right now, I think my first go is going to be to listen between periods of quiet. So maybe I'd start here, pick up a period of quiet here, maybe another one here, another one here. I'd get a good PUID off this one. Bad, bad. So my next strategy for that would be I'd listen between periods of quiet, and then maybe I'd query with this chunk, with this chunk, with this chunk, with this chunk, with this, and with the whole thing. So I'd tell it how many periods of silence it could listen between, and see how many periods of quiet I could tolerate before I started losing files again, or see where I can optimize that. So we're gonna give that a try and see how that strategy works out for me, and maybe go from there. So big thanks to Sean O'Sullivan, of course, without whom none of this would be happening, and Northy for taking a leap of faith and bringing in a stupid EE to his high-end software group. It's really cool to be here, and all of you. And especially to Tim Horton. I have this bad habit of at 2:30 in the morning breaking things terribly, putting up Facebook statuses to the effect of, oh God, oh God, oh God. Tim's usually there within 4.5 minutes, fixes it, so big thanks to him. And of course to Music Brains, Music DNS, and the developers for the Picard application. They've really been, without them this wouldn't be possible, and they inspired a lot of the work that I've done. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
So can you not interface with the whatever player they're using to
with the tagger?
Can it throw a signal when it starts a new song and then you get to start listening?
That I considered doing it that way, where you would pull in everything they had and then just send bits of data to it. What I needed out of it was a pretty small, in terms of how much source code there was, it's a pretty small portion of what they have written. So it seemed a little bit more time effective and efficient to do it standalone. And besides that, I skirt some dependencies that way. Yeah, I gave it some thought. Go ahead.
Are you concerned about the Music DNS servers ever going down?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. And I've actually looked in a little bit to see if there's any other databases that I could use to get fingerprints and PUIDs. One thing that was really interesting to me was services like Shazam. You give them 10 seconds and they're done. They've got it. but I couldn't find what database they're running off of or anything else that's open source that I could handle with that wouldn't cause me a licensing grievance. So this was my best option right now because of its availability, the fact that it's licensable, and I had enough courage to do something with this because that's what the guys at Music Brains are doing. And their application is way more well developed than mine will be and used by a much bigger public than I anticipate mine will be in the next year. So if it's good enough for them, I figured if it goes down, they'll be looking for a solution too. Yep.
So you're talking about trying to optimize it to send as little data over as possible, right?
Yeah.
But have you finished like an end-to-end, just doing the stupid send the whole thing over?
No, well the reason I haven't done that yet is because I haven't implemented listening the way I want to yet. So there isn't a full end-to-end piece of software yet. Once I have something that works some of the time, I'll start looking into optimizing for both working all the time and being a good steward of the web service so that I'm not just hammering them with stupid queries.
The next slide is your schedule, is it? There was one more slide?
I don't think so.
Okay. So you had a rough schedule, so you had the whole...
Oh, I just pushed the project status up here instead. So, that's what's going on now. And actually, once I've got listening implemented, then I get to start navigating the vast and wonderful world of build systems, which I've never seen before. So that'll be exciting. Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.